sometime later this week. The recording will just be of the speaker, so if you don't want to be included, just keep your camera off and keep muted, and you will be not appear. And with that, I'm going to give a brief introduction to our speaker and then hand it off to our Executive Director, Doug Trum, who will do the interview. We're very excited tonight to be joined by Sound Transit CEO Julie Timm. She became CEO in 2022 and decided to jump right into a number of controversies that surround what is one of the largest transit expansion programs in the nation, and something that I think, especially as urbanists, we're all very excited about and have a lot of both enthusiasm and thoughts on. Prior to coming into the Sound Transit, she was CEO of the Greater Richmond Transit Company. And I will let her and Doug get into the rest of her biography. With that, Doug and Julie.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I think you did it justice. So I think, Julie, you can introduce yourself and make your opening remarks for the first few minutes here, and then we'll dive into questions.
Oh, well, thank you. I have, again, I'm Julie Timm, CEO of Sound Transit, been here for just over 7 months, so maybe 7.5 now. By the end of this month, it'll be at 8. So we're still counting in terms of months. At least it's not weeks anymore. I did serve just prior to this as CEO of Greater Richmond Transit Company, and I took that position in September of 2019. And we know that what happened almost immediately after that was COVID. Managing a transit system through COVID was no small feat. I wasn't alone in it. There are people across the country who've done it, but it certainly transformed a lot of how we think about transit, mobility, the essential workforce, our riders, the needs of our community. It's informed a lot of my talking points and a lot of my position on how we actually do serve our communities. I have spent about 26 years in the industry, not just transit, transportation across the board. And so I have a pretty wide range of understanding about how people and logistics move through the systems, but there's always more to learn. And there's always new ways of doing things. And if you've actually been on one system, you have actually been on one system. They're all different, they're all unique, and they're all a reflection of the communities they serve in various ways. I have a ton of notes that I can go through, but I would really prefer, if it's okay, to keep my introduction short and really go straight to an interview style. Mm-hmm. There's so many things I think that we can have a lot of fun just having a conversation around these points. And if that's okay, I'd love to hand it back over to you to do that.
I love that. Yeah, I hate it when I'm trying to cut someone off when they are kind of on their stump speech or whatever goes a little bit long. So I appreciate that. That is the right instinct, I think. Let's jump into the kind of topic of the day. I don't know if you told your team we have to get light rail fully back open before this Urbanist meetup, or if that was just good luck. But walk us through what it took after that sort of unexpected accident, construction mishap, whatever you want to call it, at the street level on Pine Street that impacted Westlake Station.
Yeah.
For folks who haven't followed that story, it was I guess it was a post clock for kind of advertising for Benbridge and ornamental. The installation of that didn't go as planned. But service is back to normal today. So what did that take?
It took a pretty large effort. You certainly don't expect a clock tower to fall through the roof. And yeah, that's not what happened. A little hyperbole there, but it definitely not the kind of thing that you're going to wake up in the morning and say, okay, we're going to fix a hole in our ceiling today. The challenge when we started seeing the debris and we started seeing the water that came through the roof and it hit the platform, of course, the team immediately sprang into action to say, what's going on? They went out, they cordoned off that area, they put up barriers so that people would not be underneath just the debris in the water. They went out immediately to kind of inspect it. Not kind of, they actually did. They looked at it from the surface. We couldn't see much from inside the ceiling area because of the way that structure is in the mezzanine. It's pretty high up there. And there are other structures in the place. There are some ceiling beams and some marble that made it very hard to really see what was going on. When we first looked into it, we could see some of the debris, but it didn't look too bad. It looked like it was mostly contained and there was just mostly dirt. When we went back and really looked at it and we knew that there was rain coming and we got the equipment out there to dig in a little bit, take some of the debris away. And when we realized the extent of the potential damage, that's when we said, okay, we have to shut down. This is not safe. Even though we have protective membranes in place to protect from falling debris, the size of the concretes that we were seeing made it very, very challenging for us to stay open. It just wasn't safe. As the debris came down, not only was there the challenge that it could fall on someone on the platform, it could also fall on the overhead wires. It could fall on the tracks and create an actual safety issue for the trains. These are the concerns that caused it to shut it down. And that was Thursday, a week and a half ago. Once that happened, we then had to go through a process where there was an emergency call by me. We had to call the emergency. That allowed us to get a contractor moving. They had to engineer the scaffolding. The scaffolding wasn't just a matter of putting on the mezzanine. We had to support it all the way down to the platform, going all the way up to the ceiling across to make sure that it was supported, with the intention that that scaffolding would be able to get us into the ceiling and really see the damage and see how bad, whether it was a superficial damage or worse, a significant structural damage. And with the membranes involved, we really couldn't see that. And it took a couple of days, honestly, probably slower than it should have, for us to get that engineering contract in place, to get the approvals, to get the engineering. The scaffolding actually had to be designed to get it approved, to make sure it was safe, to actually get it installed. And then once it was installed, that was Friday. And Friday, I called the team together and said, okay, we had the scaffolding. Now this, I know that, you know, I don't want to oversimplify, but we go on the streets every day and there's scaffolding that you walk under on the sidewalks for the skyscrapers. So did we design it so that people could actually be safe underneath it? And could we put service back in place? And that's when we met on Saturday on site to look and say, can we get in the ceiling? How bad is it? Look underneath. Can we actually open up service? Is it safe? Is the scaffolding too close to the OCS wires, too close to the electrification? How do we prevent people from climbing up on the scaffolding? The goal is get service back in place now. And we couldn't. We got a lot of great ideas going, but when it came right down to it, the system was de-energized. The scaffolding needed to be wrapped to prevent people from climbing up on it. And there was still debris that was falling down, and there was still water. By the time we got to a few hours in is when the team really started to get creative. And they said, well, okay, so we can't open tonight, but what if we opened up tomorrow? What if we opened up on Friday? What if, or on Monday? What if we opened up on Tuesday? What would it take? How do we get the system re-energized? That's a whole thing that has to be done on non-revenue hours. Make sure that we don't have water dripping down where people can slip off the platform of the tracks. Make sure that all that's safe. So we were heading full scale on to doing that and get service back up and running. And it still would be disruptive service. We were still looking at how do we have ADA access as people are coming off the trains onto the platform with that scaffolding there, emergency access, making sure that the safety and fire department would approve it. And so there were still challenges, and there's still going to be disruptions. We get service back, but it was going to be disruptive. And then eventually when we took the scaffolding down, we'd have to shut everything down again to get all that together. And one of our teammates came up with an idea, said, look, the contractor Hoffman, so we have scaffolding in the ceiling now. So we can get up into it and we can do the work from the ceiling with that scaffolding, and we can remove the scaffolding that's down on the platform level. And once that's gone, the system can be re-energized and we can bring service back, and the repairs can continue to work in the ceiling. And by this point, they had unwrapped it and realized that the architectural damage was not as severe as we had feared. It was repairable and we could open. At that point, and that was Saturday afternoon, so I'm giving you the whole narrative here. I'm talking forever, I apologize. And we said, okay, realistically, how long will it take to unlock the locks there on the OCS, the catenary, to get the system energized? Can we actually shut down the middle of the day? We had a lot of games going on, so we don't want to do that. So we'd have to do it at night. So we had to wait for the night. We had to get the scaffolding down before we could do that. So the
Rude. Stop it.
Oh, I'm assuming that was a puppy or something. So as we're moving forward through that logic, it says like, well, it looks like we're in a really good place to get service up on Tuesday. Not what we wanted, but we're like, wow, that's a great win. Went home on Saturday night. And on Sunday, the team called me up and said, We got the scaffolding down overnight. We didn't have to wait until Monday for the team to come in to take the scaffolding out. It's done, it's gone. And we're like, wow. Really unexpected, because we expected the folks that put it up were taking the weekend off, and calling them back on the weekend was going to be a challenge. They came right back. And then the team, we had to talk to King County Metro. They weren't planning on starting service until Thursday. And then we got them to Tuesday, and now we're like, can you do it now? Can you do it tonight? And we took almost all day Sunday going back and forth with King County Metro, pulling the staff back in, making sure that we get energized on Sunday night, until finally, as I'm on the beach texting back and forth, I'm doing some work, looking at the whatever, texting with the team, multitasking. They finally said the call in the afternoon. King County Metro's on it. They're going to be able to energize it tonight, and we can start service tomorrow. And we made the call, and celebrations. It was not an easy feat. It took a whole shift in our mindset to shift the plan, and then shift it again, and then shift it again, and call people in to work all Sunday night and Saturday night to get it done. And they did.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. I know that, you can see why it wasn't just a snap of the fingers, like we're reopening, because there's a lot of different moving parts. Have you had a chance to sort of get to the next part of how we prevent something like this from happening again? Is it sort of reminding whether I don't know if that's an SDOT approval or an SDCI approval, reminding them like, hey, that is 3 feet below the surface there on Pine Street. So, whenever there's a permit, reminding those folks that you can't dig any deeper than that, or you will literally shut down the city's transportation system. Or is that too early to say?
It's a little too early to say. We've already looked at lessons learned. We're already implementing some conversations to get, what does it take to get put on the permit approval process whenever anyone is doing any work near any of our infrastructure, because this won't be the last time this happens. We're not a bus service where you can shut down a bus stop and just move it over a block while you're doing construction. Literally, when people are doing construction in our right of way, with the electrical wires there, with operations and service, we have to be part of the permitting process. So that's one of the things that we'll be talking to our partners about. I've already talked to a couple of our leaders around the region, and they all are very supportive of finding a way to make sure that we are included in the permitting process whenever anyone's doing construction near our system. That'll help. Won't solve it, but it'll help. We have a couple other lessons learned. So it took us a day or two to be able to get the emergency services and get the contractor on board and get that moving. We're looking to do in the future to have on-call contracts for emergency services so we can respond faster, that we can dial up SDOT or one of our partners and use their equipment to be able to bring in the back. Because one of the issues early on was we used, the soil was wet at the surface where they dug, and they were using a wet vac to kind of suck it out, and that was actually making it worse. We had to move that out and get another equipment in to dry back it out so we could really see down into where the damage was. If we'd had a vehicle like that on call, or if we had access to it faster, we probably could have also been on it faster. So there's some lessons learned in what we need to have in place to help increase our response time. But that wasn't your question. Your question was, how do we prevent it? And the answer is we don't. We can minimize the risk, but as long as we're operating, there will always be a disruption. The question is, how do we try and minimize it and mitigate it as much as possible and respond more quickly when it happens, because it is going to happen.
Yeah, thanks for walking through that. We definitely got a few questions in the chat as well. Another service quality issue that I know you, in the registration form, I should say. Okay. Also, people can suggest questions in the chat, but we have quite a few questions already. You're welcome to try, but I'm gonna be bouncing around a little bit here, trying to get through all of them.
All right.
But the other kind of, this is a good Westlake one issue as well, where currently the escalators I think they're all working, but that has been a perennial issue since Sound Transit inherited the system from Metro, going back to the days when it was a bus tunnel. Some of those things are at their service life, and Sound Transit has a plan, I think, over the course of 9 years to replace all of those. And I know some folks are asking for it to happen sooner. What can you say to those folks, and what's that process going to be to get do you have escalators and elevators at a higher rate of operating?
Okay, so again, I'm going to say the same thing I said about how can we prevent this from happening again. Same answers. How can we make sure that the elevators and escalators never go down? And the answer is we can't. We can't and we won't, because anything that has mechanical gears is going to break. The question is how do we reduce the frequency of them breaking down, increase the availability of them for the operators, not the operators, for our riders. When they go down, how do we respond more quickly? How do we get that information to ourselves so that our maintenance folks can get there faster, have people on site? There's managing these assets is not the same as preventing them from ever going down, because that's just not going to happen. If you have a car, it's going to break. If you've got a light rail system, it'll go down. The question is, how do you minimize it? So first thing, we have about 200 of these assets. I call them assets, vertical conveyances, elevators and escalators that we're managing. By the time we're done with our construction, we're estimating over the 116 miles we'll have 500 of these. That means that they will continue to break down, they age, and we'll replace them. When we received the tunnel, started managing that, there are 58 that are associated with the downtown tunnel, and 28 of them were in a long-term out situation. Right now, I believe we're actually down to 2 that are in a long-term out. Total right now, we have 4 of our 200 assets that are, I'm looking at my notes here because I get a daily report. I look at it every single day. We have 4 that have a long-term outage, which is about a month or so or more. One of them has been out for over a year, that's IDS. We have 3 that are in short-term outages due to mechanical failures. Let's see, another one is because of no visual reason. We're trying to figure out why. Sometimes they just go down, someone jumps on them, they stop. And we have another one that was at Westlake that went out again for an unknown reason. Sometimes they just go out and we had to go out and fix them. Schindler will get out within hours. That's pretty good, honestly. Now, some of the reasons why they go out is they go out because, I'm going to be blunt here, people pee on them, quite literally. People throw their, they jump on them. They throw their, I have a picture of someone who's thrown their skateboard down it. I have, sometimes people have accidents on them physically, they fall. All those things cause them to break. There's weather, there's materials. Each time we fix them, we upgrade the components. Each time we go out there, we make it a little bit better when we fix it. We're also looking at having our security, our station attendants, possibly the fare ambassadors, have access to some of the switches. So when it gets shut off because someone's jumped on it, it can be just as simple as resetting it, and it can be done that quickly. But we need to make sure that we have staff that are nearby that can do that quickly, and that will bring them up more quickly. Now, one of your questions was, how do we get ahead of this so it's not 9 years to replace the assets in the downtown tunnel? The original plan was closer to 10 years. We have a procurement that's on the street right now where we're looking to use the IDS CID station as a test to be able to replace the elevators and escalators and see how can we do that with minimal disruptions to the public. The original plan is to put in the quality of elevators and escalators we really would want to have. We would actually have to dig out the envelope of where they sit. They are not wide enough and they are not long enough, and they're the constraints of that physical environment. We would have to come in and then bring a whole new and drop it in through the tunnel. We would have to shut down service for every time we do an elevator or anytime we do an escalator and we replace them throughout the tunnel. We'd have to shut down service, and that's just not something we're ready to do. What we can do is we can replace them more from the top down. The team is looking at it. They're going to try it with this IDS model, and if it works, we'll reduce the time of replace it from 10 years down to 7 years with very minimal service disruptions. That's the goal, but it takes time. We can't do them all at once. We can't shut down all the elevators and escalators at the same time. You couldn't use the stations. They have to be done incrementally over time to make sure that we maintain that accessibility needs for stations. But I've already seen the plan from the team to look at ways to reduce not only the service impact, but also the time and duration it's going to take to replace them.
Yeah, thanks. And we're not expecting 100%, but as someone mentioned in the chat, it does seem like the operatability of whatever we call the ratio, the the time they're in service has gone up. It seems like improved. But yeah, there had been some bad months during the pandemic, and it's great to see that go up. But yeah, obviously there's some folks who can't even use the station if the elevators are down. So we definitely have to reach for as high as we get. We know 100% is not possible, but appreciate that answer. And
can we talk a little bit about that? Because you're right.
yeah,
If someone is in a mobility device and they can't use the stairs and they can't use the escalator, they have to use the elevator, and the elevator they need isn't working, they have no access to the platform. The team is working on, I don't have a lot of details on this because I'm pretty excited about seeing where they go with it. I don't know what the timeline is, but it's a multi-phase approach. One is better wayfinding throughout the system in real time. One is better wayfinding and with the digital devices, to be able to use devices to be able to wayfind through the station, to be able to get better messages about what's up and down. The PIMS, passenger information management system, hopefully that will also help people navigate through the system. And in future expansions, there's a lot higher design quality in making sure we have redundancy in those elevators and escalators, because they do go down. And you have to have that redundancy, or else people get stranded on platforms, and that's not okay. And if you're that one person or that group of people who need that station on that day when that elevator is not working, your reality is that the system doesn't work.
yeah. I appreciate that. I mean, that is, and for folks with disabled folks, sometimes they don't have the option to just drive. So we appreciate that focus. But let's pivot over to expansion. And I know folks are excited about that. We have the one line now. We don't really need to call it the one line because there's only one line, but there soon will be two, and then it will be good that we know it is the one line. If for folks who are getting caught up to speed here, originally, Eastlink was the next one to open, and that might still be true, or it might not. And Linwood Link might leapfrog it. We're currently looking at, I think, 2024 with the starter line for Eastlink, probably late 2024 or 2025 potentially, if they open the whole thing, potentially all the way to Redmond. But that decision, as far as I can recall, hasn't fully been made. That the Sound Transit Board will be tackling that soon. Did you have any update on that front? Did I do that summary right? Is there a lean right now, or is it really just Linwood Link or Eastlink potentially being the next one to open?
Well, let me start with Linwood, because I think it's really important to know responsibility for this messaging, that there's this idea out there that there is a competition for which starts first, Linwood or Eastlink starter. And the reason why that messaging is out there is, when I first got here, my commitment to the board, my commitment to the public was to be very transparent, to identify risks and opportunities, and to do it early. And when you do that, that means that you're talking about things that aren't fully formed. We didn't know whether or not we needed the amount of time when Eastlink starter would be ready, or when Linwood. We were still working through that. And we were also looking at the need to possibly not overlap the different starter lines or services on top of each other because of resource constraints. And so we identified that early on, that was a potential risk of doing Eastlink starter and Linwood, that depending on how some of our risks moved forward, they would try to open too close, and that could be a very challenging risk for us because we didn't have enough staff, and that we didn't want to do that. So we identified that early, and that came with the unfortunate message of Eastlink might delay Linwood. And let me tell you right now, that's not going to happen. Linwood is its own independent project on its own independent schedule, and we are trending very well for that summer fall opening. When construction is done and we get our pre-revenue service, that will open on time when it's ready. Now, there are other issues and constraints about the service it will have when it opens, because it doesn't have access to OMF East, operations maintenance facility. That has nothing to do with the opening of Eastlink. That is a separate issue that is unfortunate, that we can't get across I-90. That was the plan, is to be able to get across I-90, have both of those OMFs open, so we'd have enough vehicles to run everything. That's off the table. But Linwood opening more or less on the target schedule and on the schedule we planned is pretty close, and that's moving forward. Now, Eastlink, there's an opportunity, and we talked about this when I first got here, and it's been ongoing for the past several months, that the section of Eastlink that hits Bellevue between South Bellevue and Redmond Technology Center, that the construction is trending well towards being done, and there's a ridership need there. I wouldn't say that it's a strong high ridership number, but there is still a ridership need, and there's a significant population that could use it to have a better commute into and out of Bellevue, to get to jobs, to get to entertainment, to get to food, to get to healthcare, all the reasons why we know transit. And the longer we have that asset out of service, once it's the construction's done, the more it costs to maintain it without service and without the revenues of people riding it. So there's a lot of incentive and a lot of value to getting that started. It also helps us to get the OMF East kind of circulating into and out of service. There's just many, many, many benefits. The challenge now is, do we have enough vehicles over at OMF East? Do we have enough operators, enough mechanics, enough SCADA techs to be able to open it full service? And the answer to that's no. So I think we're still trending towards construction being ready for us to open. There's still a couple of risks, but we have enough staff to open. And what we're going to hear about in the next couple of days is that there's still some risks with that. There's some risks that we need to make sure we preserve the operations on the one line. We can't take service away from the one line to open up Eastlink. We can't, that's just not equitable. So we're considering other service scenarios. Do we open up, because there will be less ridership on the Eastlink until it comes across the water, do we open up maybe for maybe a shorter span of service, or do we open up with longer headways? There's still service there. It activates the line. It helps us maintain the asset in operational order, so it's not sitting there with people with vandalism or other security issues. There's benefits, and we are still trending towards doing that and having that work. There is still risk. We still might need to off-ramp before the board makes that decision. And we're keeping the board appraised of what those opportunities and risks are, so that they can make a very informed decision. But they are not in competition with each other. We will open them up when they are ready with the proper staff, but possibly to reduce service level because of the availability of operators and vehicles.
And one idea that I think maybe the board was bouncing, or it might have been a staff member, was, you know, what if there was a temporary base basically to store vehicles along the one line? I don't know how serious that proposal was. Is that something that is being explored, or is it ruled out? That sort of seemed to be one idea to make sure limitlink could open with a reasonable amount of service, maybe not the full amount originally envisioned, but getting it to a level where it's getting people where they mostly need to go.
Yeah, we are still looking at that, what the opportunities are. And there are some opportunities out there that we're looking at. Some of them just aren't going to happen. I think some folks suggested, well, the new line that goes towards Judkin Park, the new station there, we could store it along there. We can't. The plinths aren't in place. That issue of the plinths goes all the way up to right outside my window. There are also some pocket tracks in some other areas where we've looked at, could we store those temporarily to increase that? And so the team is continuing to look at it. I have to say it's not looking optimistic. We haven't given up. We've looked out under the boulders. I've told my team we're looking under rocks. We will eventually get to looking under pebbles. We will not stop until we've explored these options. But where some things I'm very optimistic and hopeful about, this one, I wouldn't even say I'm cautiously optimistic. I think the vehicles we have are, with the storage capacity we have in OMF Central, is going to be a limiting factor. I wouldn't say service is going to be awful. The one good part about that I think you may have heard or may not have heard is the Revive I-5 has been deferred. So that was part of our challenges, that we were concerned that WashDOT would be doing reconstruction on I-5 at the same time that we didn't have the level of service on Linwood that we wanted. And people would be transferring out of their cars onto the new Linwood service with that lower frequency. With them deferring that out, I think that that's going to help us. we're projecting that the larger area of higher need for service is probably south of Northgate. So people will be coming on at Linwood, and then we'll start having more likelihood of crush loads once you get to Northgate and below. So can we maybe consider additional trains, some gap trains, different service parameters to help when we are looking at those high ridership times, as opposed to having even and equal frequencies on the entire line the entire day. So the team is looking at both vehicle storage as well as operational scenarios to really optimize the ride as best as we can for our riders.
That rare case of Washcott's deferred maintenance being a positive for us in this case. And do you remind me what the service level that you could hit with Linwood Link opening without access to East Link is there? That's kind of a fixed number, or is there any squeezing of that?
I think the team is still looking at, again, the operational scenarios. Do we try and get those 8-minute frequencies at the peak times when we have the highest ridership in midday and evening to go down to 10-minute frequencies? Do we try and do 10-minute frequencies all day? We haven't come to that answer yet. We're still looking at scenarios. I think if you watch SCC, our System Expansion Committee meeting on Thursday, you'll get a little bit more of that information. We're going to keep on piecemealing it out. I hate that word. Breadcrumbing it out. As we have the information, we are releasing it so that people can see where we're at with these analyses.
And then, not to leave Federal Way Link behind, any new developments there? It sounds like that might be trending towards either late 2025 or early 2026, last I heard. And for folks who weren't following that, related to sort of a landslide type issue that happened in the Kent Des Moines area, if I'm recalling correctly. And they're building a bridge there where they didn't, but that's delaying it. But I think other than that, the project went pretty well, but that added a wrinkle.
Well, a wrinkle is probably an understatement. So there's certain times in your life when you don't want to learn new words. One of them is when you learn that you're about to come to a new job, and there was a liquefaction of soils that caused a significant disruption in construction. Like, I had to look up liquefaction. I'll have to be honest with you. That was a new one for me. Not the right time to learn a new word. The team, Kiewit is the contractor on this one, worked with our engineers and third parties to really look at how do we construct over that area safely without further disruption of the soils and further risk to our own structure, as well as the adjacent I-5 and the rest of that area and the wetlands in the area. It took a while to come up with it. I think that when I first got here, they had 3 different options on the table. I don't remember the first 2 because they told me, but they did away with them. What they're looked at is what's called a long span, so that it's a higher cost bridge structure, but it will span further over that area to reduce the risk of further structural issues because of the soils. That is just been approved. If you watch the SEC meeting in 2 days, again, I know that this is recorded, so if people are watching this 5 days from now, like, well, 2 days, no. So I should give you dates. The 8th, for the 9th, so 10th, 11th of May. So if you watch the System Expansion Committee on the 11th of May, we're going to give a full update on the Structure C and Federal Way for the board. And then that's in preparation so that we can go to the board for the contract amendment to get this structure going. The contractor's already working with us to get that moving in advance of the official and formal approval of the board. And we're pretty excited that our partners are working so proactively to keep that going. The rest of the project is doing pretty good. There's always issues with construction, but it's pretty much on target. The question that we've gotten from the board and we've gotten from community members is, what are the opportunities to maybe open the one line, or the line to the south all the way down to Kent Des Moines while we're waiting for the final construction on Structure C, which is further to the south? And the answer is, we don't know yet. We love the idea of early openings. We love the idea of advancing, accelerating opening of areas to stations when they're ready to open. And there's definitely a possibility there that is looking more the 25, 26 timeframe. So maybe 25 for Federal Way Des Moines. If we're able to accelerate it, the rest of it's trending more towards 2026. I'd say that the bigger risk for opening up a kind of a starter or incremental increase to Kent Des Moines, the bigger risk there is when we can get across to OMF East. We need access to OMF East for the vehicles to get them across the water, across I-90. Without that, any further expansion beyond Linwood jeopardizes the frequency of the entire service. It just spreads us too thin. So we're not going to make any commitment or promise on that until we have a better idea of how we're going to get across I-90 and get better access to OMF East.
And I guess we might as well pivot over to SD3 and work our way right down the line. There's also delays farther to the south related to some issues that sort of just crept up in Stobald relating to both the Fief station being at the Fife or Fief. I always forget how to say it, but
I think
I
don't
Fife.
know.
Okay, there we go. It felt wrong, so I switched it. There we go. That one is on a 100-year floodplain. And then the other issue was some tribal resources on the I-5 route in the southern part of Federal Way, where we're talking about the SD3 portion of that Federal Way link, actually the Tacoma Dome link extension part of that. Just give everyone a reminder where we're at there, and if it's looking more likely that the line actually will go along 99 there instead of 5, or if it's just presented as an alternative just in case. Because I think even I digging into this for the story, I was a little bit like, okay, which one's actually more likely to happen now, or is it just maybe we don't know?
It's a hard question to answer because we are still in the NEPA process. And if you're familiar with National Environmental Policy Act, and that's where I was trained early in my career as a planner in the National Environmental Policy Act. One of the things they train you is don't be pre-decisional. You can't until you get through the EIS, you get the FEIS, you get the public comment, you get the agency input, and get to a record of decision. You don't say what you're doing because that's called pre-decisional. We are a long way away from our FEIS and our record of decision. We are still probably a good couple years away from that. So that's when we'll know exactly what alternative in alignment is the one the board will select to move forward for the system expansion. I think it's fair to say that we have identified that the alignment along I-5 has, and along Fife, along the floodplain, are significant risks. And while we don't know which one will be the ultimate one that will be chosen to move forward, I think it's safe to say that SR 99 is looking more favorable at this time, considering where we are in our study process.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. Both accurate, but also telling us which way you're leaning. Sometimes it feels tough to be many years in these processes and feel like we're still unsure. But that makes sense. Let's talk about the Seattle's decision, because obviously that was a huge amount of tension on the busiest Sound Transit meeting I've ever seen. The Chinatown decision really looms large, and how is that additional studies going? We have a new option emerging here with the Pioneer Square and south of CID option. How long will it take to get that to sort of full DES study, draft environmental impact statement? Apologies everyone for all the acronyms, but it's kind of unavoidable once you get into this level of plenaries. Yes, there's a little extra time being taken to get this right, which the Urbanist Editorial Board advocated for, but certainly folks are anxious to get this moving along so we can hopefully get this open.
I agree. The NEPA process is something that I absolutely adore, because the intellectual process of it, of looking at alternatives, of finding solutions, engaging with the community, finding these investments that are generational, that are right. I love that. And at the same time, it's also true that it's incredibly frustrating the time it takes to get through these processes. It feels glacial in the time it takes. NEPA documents, National Environmental Policy Act, EIS's environmental impact statements. They do take a long time. And I know the Federal Transit Administration and other folks are looking at how do we streamline it, make it faster. And that's still a challenge with litigation and court case law requiring more and more agencies to do more and more analysis before they make decisions to try and protect against litigation. It slowed the entire process down for decades. So I just went really wonky into the NEPA world. Sorry about that. The question was about what are we doing now that we know that we have new alternatives on the table for the Ballard section of West Seattle Ballard. Well, the first thing we're doing is we're breaking the project into two, which it always should have been. The West Seattle part that will go to the Soto area, and then the Ballard part, which goes north with the new tunnel. And that's going to help us not accelerate. That's going to help us not delay one while we study the other. West Seattle has the preferred alternative selected to it. It is also because of how it's coming to the Delridge area. I think I said that right, Delridge. It has the alternative there will have an incredible connection point and transfer point for people who are down in the more of the international districts, not the CID, but international communities further south in West Seattle that come up to the bus can then transfer to light rail and have access there. By decoupling the Ballard project from the West Seattle allows us to have that equity in advancing that project for those communities on a faster timeline. So that one's still moving forward. That's still in the 2032 timeframe, and you'll see some more on that coming out. In the meantime, it means that the Ballard section is going to restart. And I use my finger quotes. I don't like to use finger quotes often, but I'm using it now. So what that means is the Federal Transit Administration, because this is a NEPA project, a national project, you have to have a national sponsor. In this case, it's FTA. Because we started this as a single EIS under FTA, now that we're separated to the, I believe I'm going to get this right, and I have team members on the phone here who can kick me under the table proverbially if I get this wrong, but the idea is that West Seattle will move forward into a final EIS and move and get a record decision in advance, while the Ballard section moves into a new EIS. All the comments, all the work, all the analysis will then streamline into that. We'll do the EIS, move forward to get to a record decision, but it does delay the entire project. I think that one we're looking at a schedule that's much later delayed, that 2037 plus. Don't quote me on that one. I think it's even later than that. But we're looking at that's going to be a while before the Ballard section goes then, because the complexities of getting through the CID, the tunnel, the getting up to Ballard itself, and the tunnel that's necessary to go into the Inner Bay area. Those are very, very challenging technical engineering design needs and construction needs that will take some more time. I think I talked around your question though. Do you want to try to and redirect me onto your question?
I think you partially answered it. So, yeah, sorry folks if you're still confused, because it is a confusing thing. So there were 3 stations that had sort of lingering questions. They didn't have a preferred alternative yet, and we mentioned the Chinatown one. There's also a I think it was Denny Way and at South Lake Union also had they didn't have a full on preferred alternative yet. And with those, you're hoping to get that settled this spring or early summer, I think. But the reality is that the Chinatown International District Station there's not going to be enough information yet, because you're still getting the all the designs together and to the same level of complexity as the existing options, because the new Pioneer Square north and south of CID option didn't exist as of 2022. It's an option that emerged in 2023. Yeah. It sounds like I summarized that correctly. And I guess I didn't ask the question very succinctly, but maybe a more direct way to ask it is, and I just saw that today, this Chinatown International District got, declared a endangered, a historic district, cultural resource. And, how will that, in any of the scenarios, obviously that puts strain on the neighborhood. What is the process going to be like to sort of engage that community and develop plans that, fight displacement, that ensure cultural resources and businesses stay open? Because I know a lot was planned, but it feels like the agency isn't used to having to tackle those questions early in the process. But you can see why in this case, there's a lot of concern about, is the neighbor going to make it through this?
Yeah, no, those are really okay. So they're really relevant and timely questions, but they're also separate questions. So there's one about the alternatives around the CID, and then the alternatives a little further north, the Denny, Westlake, South Lake Union issues. And those are more or less separate from each other. So if we can address them as two separate issues, I think that would be helpful, a little bit clearer. So the board meeting where we were, I guess, just 2 months ago, it feels like forever ago, the board came out and they asked that they selected a preferred alternative for the Ballard section that did include the north-south CID station alternatives and include the Denny Westlake alternatives, but also directed Sound Transit to continue the studies for the CID of the fourth shallower, and the other issue that I said I wouldn't conflate, and here I am doing it, Denny Terry. So those are some of the outstanding questions of the board. Just felt like they needed some more information in the process to look at the trade-offs. We have a lot of good information. The team hustled and did a lot of community outreach and came forward in an incredibly short period of time with some very reasonable alternatives. Reasonable, of course, being depending on where you sit and what your position is on these. So different people might have a different opinion, but they are good alternatives. They're not, I would say there's no best alternative at this point. And that's what we're trying to continue to engage the community on, is what are the opportunities to activate Union Station, to improve the conditions of the community where we're by activating the station area encourages more business, also helps drive business to the community without the gentrification issues that do come with high capacity transit investments. How do we protect against that? We're going to continue to have these conversations with the community because it definitely is the full commitment of the board to move this project forward while engaging with and lifting up the Chinatown International District community, the entire community. It's frustrating, I think, for everyone to be in this process and have an opinion on what is the best way to serve the community and the best way to avoid harm to the community. And I don't think there is a best. I think there are trade-offs with each of these options that we need to very carefully weigh. And that conversation will be continuing over the next months and years until a final decision is selected. A lot of passion around this topic. And I'm actively avoiding weighing in on which I think is the best, because honestly, I think that the best option is the one we're not doing. And this is going to be controversial, so someone's going to kick me under the table here. Rainbows and unicorns. There is a world in which we all get along and we all have the best life and everyone is lifted up and there's no racism and there's no inequity and we can make all the perfect decisions. And people trust each other and government always does the right thing. Okay, so we laid the groundwork to know that this isn't a realistic conversation already, right? In that world, the Fifth Avenue alternative could lift up the CID and bring new investment and new business there. We are not in a perfect world. Government doesn't do things right all the time, and there's no guarantee that if we went with a Fifth Avenue, that it wouldn't be so disruptive to the CID that it would disrupt the fabric of that very community, which is why it's off the table. And it's a shame because it's a great alternative in a theoretical world. It just doesn't work in our imperfect world. That's really disappointing when we're faced with the realities of people. Going back to the fourth shallower, that is also an intriguing option. And I think there's a lot of conflating of ideas about how reasonable that option is. It is a very elegant solution for creating a multimodal transit hub right there that people could get into the CID and have that easy transfer. Unfortunately, it is a very challenging solution. The engineers have looked at it and looked at it and looked at it. We found some alternatives that maybe help, but there are substructure issues, there are soil issues, there are right-of-way issues with BNSF, there are transportation issues along 4th corridor that do make construction in that incredibly challenging. And that's frustrating because again, in an ideal world, that solution has a lot of elegance to it, and be able to reactivate and connect through Union Station, which is this historic, beautiful structure. I remember the first time I walked into it, I'm like, oh, this is mine. Because I take great pride and ownership in the system, even though I'm new here. And I can't wait for more people to share in that joy. And a 4th Avenue solution, to me, does open that option up. The challenges of it are still so significant. We'll keep studying and keep looking at it, but I, again, don't have a lot of optimism around that one because the challenges are so very real. And until you go down underneath and you look at Union Station on the second subfloor, and you start looking at some of the other issues in there, it starts to become apparent how challenging it is to get through there. So that leads us to the North and South CID. You can stop me whenever you want. I'll keep talking forever. I love these ideas.
No, I'm here to hear your thoughts, so keep going.
Okay, so again, there's the challenges in the 5th, which are imperfect world, make that just completely off the table. There's an elegance to the 4th shallower and how that moves through, and very, very, very real technical engineering challenges to how to make that work. And then you have the North and the South CID. And there's also, I think if you can set aside a preference for 4th shallower, which I love that 4th shallower. North and South CID bring opportunities that I'm looking forward to the team exploring with the community. There is the south of CID, and we've got to find better names for these. And if y'all can help us find better names, that'd be awesome, because south of CID and north of CID are not completely the best way of naming these. But the one that's south of CID, the way that would come up, if you're familiar with where the Shell station is, that's right next to Uwajimaya, that's where it would come up. And we're looking at how do we bring that station entrance really close to that southern boundary of the CID to create that same level of connectivity that the current the current CID has, to create a spreading out of that, and to bring and elevate that part of the community maybe into the CID, instead of keeping on shrinking the CID, which has happened for the last several generations. What can we do to possibly expand and lift up the business community in that area? South of CID, while I can't tell you for sure, it certainly has that potential. There's risk there, but there's some potential there that if we lean into investing in the CID, that could create a great connection point. And the north of CID, again, that's an option that was come up with new to try and avoid the impacts to the CID. Now, whether or not that's going to realize the benefits of re-energizing, reactivating a space that is a little bit underdevelopment, it needs to be redeveloped. And instead of envisioning that as to what it is today, a possible north of CID connection to Pioneer Square could potentially, again, with the right investment and the right vision, lift that entire area and create a better connection between an underground connection between the new north of CID and Pioneer Square underground, which could make an easier transfer in that way. You could look at things like the moving walkways to also that could help keep it from having people go up and down and around. It's not a perfect solution. It doesn't have the same elegance that the fourth shallower does, but there are some very real opportunities in that could help expand that whole area and increase the vitality of it by allowing multiple different transfer points along the system. It's a different transit model than that single hub. And I think it's a good model. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it is intriguing, and I'm looking forward to working with the board and the community on and studying where that would work and where maybe it won't work.
And is your team, I assume, is also taking a look at the Pioneer Square station being the new hub. You know, you mentioned the difficulty of dealing with the BNSF right away. That would involve the union between those two stations, the one on 5th and the one kind of down on 3rd, where the existing Pioneer Square station is. I guess it's 4th and 3rd, but it's a lot of elevation there. There is the train tunnel in between. And you make it a very busy station, and currently you were mentioning having to widen escalators. Is that something that you would have to mine, you know, new circulation into that existing station and shut it down for a while in order to do that? How soon will we kind of know what that achieving that superstation would entail?
That's part of the study moving forward of those alternatives. Again, it's so new. We don't have a lot of that information. Over the next year or two, we'll be working with construction methodologies and designers from across the country. You may have seen the TAG report. The TAG technical advisory group that the board put together has made recommendations, which we're leaning into, to hire mega project expertise from around the country to supplement and support the expertise we have here, and to specifically address those challenges and opportunities. We don't have it now. Give us the next year or two to really define what that looks like and how it connects.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the tag, so maybe that's a good pivot over to a new topic. We've dug really deep into SD3, and folks will be excited for that to be built. But the technical advisory group's recommendations are all about trying to make sure SD3 gets built well and efficiently. You know, and it sounds like the board's interested in implementing it, and staff seem pretty interested. Though you mentioned that the recommendation to get 3 kind of capital project delivery folks. What other recommendations are kind of the ones that are being implemented right now, and what's still kind of being negotiated? Sorry, very broad question, but kind of an introduction for folks who are new to the tag, to how this will kind of change how the agency's operating.
I think that there's a lot of great recommendations coming out of the tag, and some very hard ones. The very first recommendation says we got to trust each other. And that's easy to say, but what does that mean? And how do you build trust if it is indeed broken? And I think that we do need to acknowledge that there are some challenges to how Sound Transit staff has presented information, how the board's received information, how the public's received information. And it's created some adversarial reactions in the past. I feel like we're moving away from that. I feel like we're building on a better relationship amongst board members, with staff and board, with the community and the board, through more transparency and more accountability, talking about trade-offs and risks, costs, and opportunities. So that first one is one that we're already leaning into. How do we continue to be more transparent and build that trust, so that when the staff comes forward with a recommendation, or the board doesn't want to take a staff recommendation, it's very clear why, and it's done in a collaborative way of moving the whole region forward. So that's one that we're working on right now. The second recommendation was specifically about the staffing, and I agree, we need to expand. We have 26 miles of light rail. When ST2 opens, we'll have 62 miles of light rail. When ST3 opens, we'll have 116 miles of light rail. That's, you build it, then you double it, and you double it. And you can't do that with the amount of staff we have now, especially with the complexities that we're looking at in West Seattle and Ballard and some of those tunnels. They're highly complex urban environments. And while we have expertise here who have been in Sound Transit for 20, 25 years, they've built tunnels, they've mined, they've dug, they've used the tunnel boring machines. We've done it all. And still we need more to make sure that we get it right and we deliver it right. These are highly technical, challenging projects. So we absolutely agree with that. I'd say that part of the challenge I have with the TAG recommendation right now is they have some very specific recommendations about how to structure how we hire those team members. And I believe that I understand what they're asking for. And I'm not quite sure I agree with where we're placing an organization, because when I first got here, I started restructuring the organization to be able to lift up operations and to lift up our quality controls, so that they are equal to and they counterbalance our planning and our construction. I find that when you have highly intense construction and operation, or sorry, construction and planning, and your focus is on scope, schedule, budget at all costs, you make compromises, and the people who should challenge you on those compromises and trade-offs are quality group and the ops group. And so making sure that we have good mega project experience in all three of those groups is going to be critical to making sure that we keep these projects on task. And when compromises need to be made, and they will, we have the right voices to look at it from both design, operations, and quality.
Another dynamic that the TAG report really pulled out was, developing a stronger relationships with contractors, become a contractor of choice, or a contractee, I don't want to call it, a person who, the person that, a company that the contractors actually want to work with and are jumping up, that idea. And then on top of that, are there things that can be brought in-house? Because the benefit of building 116 miles of light rail is, you want those lessons to learn to, be, coming forward into the next project, getting very skilled members, potentially, the most talented team in the country based on how much we're building. But, is that information kind of leaking through if folks are, just pivoting and it's contractor to contractor?
Yeah, no, so there's the two pieces there. One is being an owner of choice in our relationship with our contractors. And yes, there is some challenge there. Absolutely. We have some processes with our change control board, how quickly we can get changes in place, making sure that our contractors are paid once their changes are done. There's a couple of options that we're already looking at to streamline that process and improve it. I would say that there's also an oversimplification when there's a suggestion that we need to do all the changes in-house with ST. We have some contractors who love working with us. We also have contractors who say, in order for us to be an owner of choice, we have to get rid of our PLAs, which are the labor agreements, the project labor agreements. Some contractors say, as long as you have those in place, you can never be an owner of choice. And the board in this region is committed to our PLAs. They're not going away. But it also creates a level playing field that everyone who bids on our work has to agree to those. Are they challenging? Yes. Do they make a better environment for our contractors? Not the contractors' owners, but the contractor workers, the workforce? They do, and that's a commitment that this board is not going to shy away from. So how to get to be an owner of choice, depending on who you talk to, the tactics we get there could vary, and some people will never agree about what that means. We're not going to get rid of our PLAs. We will do better on our change controls. We will do better on the invoice payment that does that. Some of the things you'll read in the paper that have to do with some of the delays are us, and some of them are the contractors themselves, and how they go through the process to ask for change, and whether or not they will agree to, when we come up with a change that has to go through the process and agree to it, and then we look at the scope and we look at the budget and we come to an agreement. They can agree right then and there, that's it, and they do it, or they can say, nah, we agreed to it, but we want to come back later and true up. And when they do that, that's where you're seeing a lot of delays in payments, because the true up process means they have to put in a lot more documentation to prove that they did more or less work than what was originally agreed to. And they don't get paid until they provide that documentation. And when you have a sub or a sub of a sub who's providing that documentation and there's delays, that means they all get delayed for months. That's some of that's on Sound Transit, and some of that's on our contractors and their preferred methodology for how they get paid through these. You don't hear those things in the paper, but it's not nearly as simple as people think when they say, well, become an owner of choice, just do it right. We're going to hold our contractors accountable. We're not going to pay them more than they deserve. We're going to push them to do the right thing. And we're going to partner with them to come up with better design, better incentives, and better liquidated damages when they don't perform.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm realizing we're a little bit over time. Is it okay if we do 5 more minutes and try to power through a few more questions? Are you?
Y'all got me all night.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
well,
we might make it to everyone's question then.
My West Seattle mug.
Oh, that's lovely.
And my water, so I'm ready.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I know you've been working monster days. I saw an article about that. what your typical day is like. And that is a real testament to all the work that's being done in Sound Transit. So thank you for that, and thank you for this time. One thing that came up from a few folks is they're looking for all-day sounder service and more weekend service. What would that take? And is that something that is achievable in the nearish future?
Don't know, but we're going to look into it. Part of the sounder hasn't fully recovered. It's coming back. It's about a third of what it was on Sounder South. Sounder North is just a hot mess. But there's reasons for that. We're going to look into how to talk with BNSF to see where are our options for that midday, that evening, and that weekend service. They already are a great partner. They already work with us on providing special service trains for games to go to the Mariners or other games that on the weekends and the evenings, sometimes we'll have special trains. But we paid for early on a right-of-way time window in the morning and a right-of-way time window in the evening to align with peak commute times. That's what we paid for. That's what we operate in. To be able to go to the midday, the evenings, the weekends means we have to renegotiate that contract. And BNSF runs their freight in those timeframes. So we need to have that conversation. And we're going to start the conversation. I believe my meeting with them is as soon as next week. But where are the opportunities? What are the costs? What are the trade-offs? At the same time we're talking to BNSF and moving that forward, we're going to do a study to see, is there really the demand that people say there's the desire for that midday, night and weekend? And I believe that what we've seen across the country is there a leveling out of demand of transit. Is the demand high enough to support and warrant us opening those windows and have more? So we're going to be doing both of those. It's likely a couple-year process to get to that point, but we're starting it now. So as ridership returns, that if there is the ability to do those nights, weekends, and middays, we'll be in a position to implement.
That's exciting. Yeah, and I know that locally, as a big transit nerd, I've been tracking some of the stats, and the weekends ridership has really been a bright spot. It's almost to pre-pandemic levels, which is not the case for weekday, which maybe we'll start to see that shift a little bit as more folks go back to the office. But yeah, people will ride transit for not just their work commute, which is what some advocates have been screaming for years, but we're seeing that play out now with the strong weekend ridership numbers. So I do think maybe you would have pretty solid weekend ridership. I'm always thinking about when I'm going to get to see my friends in Tacoma, and that would be a great way to get there to do that. Let's see. Oh, here's maybe a quick one. Someone was looking for an update on when the like real-time arrival signs will be working in Link. I know that involves a big project with information technology system. TIMS, there's another acronym for folks. I forget what that means.
Passenger Information Management System.
Oh, I got confused with the chips, not TIMS, PIMS.
PIMS, yeah.
Yes, PIMS.
Yeah. Yeah, that one is both exciting and frustrating as well. I'm going to be blunt here. For those of you who've gotten to know me, you know that I tend to just blurt it out. And that's not a Pacific Northwest thing, but I'm not Pacific Northwest at heart yet. I'm getting there. I love this place. I have my Tacoma behind me. I've got my West Seattle mug, and I'm getting there. PIMS is delayed. We started the project a while ago. When COVID hit, there were shortages of workers at the design, because this is a bespoke program. We have most of the time when you see technology like this across the country, it is designed for that system. It has to speak to the trains. It has to speak to our dispatch. So these systems aren't just passenger information. They're integrated into how we actually operate our service and how we control the trains. It makes it more complex than just simply putting out signs that says next bus is arriving in a few minutes. It really is a complex challenge with the staffing shortages and trade-offs about where to put staff and where to put resources. I think that it's unfortunate that schedule slipped as long as it did. We are back on track now. And I believe the testing either started this morning or tomorrow morning. There's actually live testing of that passenger information management system on the service. You'll start seeing it on Eastlink. You'll start seeing it rollout on the new Tacoma Dome link, not Tacoma Dome, sorry, Hilltop Link extension. The current T-Link, it will be a while before it gets that, because we have to go back and retrofit some of the Series 1 light rail vehicles have to be retrofit with the technology. The current one line has to be retrofit with the technology, and that's going to take some time to put in place. I'm pushing on the team to see if we can look at how do we accelerate to get that out faster. And it's challenging with our staffing limitations right now, but I think that if with a little bit more pushing and encouragement and cheering, maybe we can accelerate it, but it's still years away before you'll see the full implementation of all of the PIMS resources across the entire system equally. It just takes a while to get those, the design of the system design underneath the stuff that you don't see, and the technology equipment out, and then making sure it's speaking to each other, especially since so much of our signs are not uniform across our system. And this new technology has to speak to every single one of these different devices. It's coming, and it's coming now, and it's not coming fast enough. I can say all those things with a straight face.
Yeah, that does sound complicated. So it is, with I don't want to hold you to more than you can promise, but so you're talking about a next year thing, or is it still a possibility for this year?
It is being launched now, so that I'm gonna knock it on wood here, because this is one of our critical path items on Eastlink starter line. It's launching now so that it will be available for Eastlink starter and roll out across the system from there. But it won't be system wide that soon. It's slowly coming out. I don't have it. I think there's actually an update, and I think it's at SC in 2 days is when we're doing it's in 2 days where the team is going to give an update that has a series of schedules on it. Don't get too excited. I was when I saw the schedules, I was disappointed, but we're still moving forward. We're going to try and accelerate them. But if you want to see more information, watch the System Expansion Committee on May the 11th.
A lot of good things happening at that meeting, or good updates.
Yeah.
You mentioned what was that the sounder system has. SD Express is also struggling with being a very commuter-oriented service as well. We had a question about if Sound Transit is looking at different system planning, kind of even going back to the drawing board on how to get good best deploy those resources. And I would add to that, is Sound Transit ever looked at just sort of partnering with the local agency? Pierce Transit comes to mind, because it sort of seemed like that's what some of the Pierce County Council members were thinking when they heard about the delay to their Tacoma Link project. Is that sort of a way to figure out how to deploy those bus resources in a reality where we're not getting great ridership on the express service right now?
Oh, it's never so simple, right? It seems like it should be simple, and it's not. So ST Express, Sound Transit Express buses, actually, I'm not sure how many people are aware that we don't operate those. Those are operated by our three partners. They're operated by King County Metro, the ones that go over to Bellevue are King County Metro. The ones that go down to Pierce County are operated predominantly, not entirely, but predominantly by Pierce Transit. And the ones that are going up to Snohomish are operated by Community Transit. There is a very strong desire to put more ST Express service out on the street. And we are constrained by the same constraints that King County Metro, Pierce Transit, and Community Transit are constrained by in putting their buses on the street. Staff. We need more people. And we need more people for that reliable service. And that's being very challenging, not just here, but across the entire country. So yes, we want to put more service out, and it is wholly reliant on staffing up for those resources across all bus lines. There's also this competing need, or a competing conversation, not need, that Sound Transit, according to the legislation, our enabling legislation, and the voter referendums, there is a underlying assumption that ST Express is there only until high capacity transit is in place. So once light rail is there, we wouldn't need the ST Express, the bus commuter lines, because light rail is there. I think what we're seeing, especially in a post-pandemic world, and what we're seeing in ridership trends now, is that underlying assumption may not be valid. We need to really reassess whether or not the same people and the same modes and the same durations, whether it's a redundant service between SD Express and Sounder and Light Rail, or those are 3 different markets serving 3 different needs. I think that's probably the case. I've asked the team to start looking at it. What would it take? And then how much is it going to cost? And what does that mean to our service delivery and to our capital program delivery if we try and pivot on a different model to maintain our SD Express services? It's an interesting conversation. I'm not sure it'll go anywhere, but we are going to have it.
Are transit executives and other governmental officials and leaders starting to have conversations about how do we recruit? How do we have a comprehensive recruitment strategy to get both bus operators, the maintenance folks, really all these kind of important, really still frontline workers in some ways type positions. We've seen large $30,000 hiring bonuses in some cases for police officers, but a bus driver I don't think is going to get that. And I wonder why the treating that so differently. But what is there anything on the table that you think can kind of change that picture? Obviously, the labor market's just tight period now, but I guess the hope is that if you got a few years to think about this, you can make it so it's the recruitment just covers up that problem.
Yeah, it is challenging, and we are being very supportive of, again, King County Metro, King County Metro, Snohomish Community Transit, and Pierce Transit, because they actually hire the people and pay the people. It's an intergovernmental agreement that passes from us to them, and then the operators and the mechanics and the maintenance team and the custodians are King County Metro employees or community transit employees, and they are definitely looking at discussions with their union on the pay structure and wages and how to support that. I know that we have labor relations teams here that are also working with our partners. I'm not as informed right now about where that is, but I do know those conversations are going on. I know that across the country, people are looking at higher bonuses for incoming bonuses, longevity bonuses, retention bonuses across all the transit different professions, and how to support people coming in and staying in. Honestly, it's a hard job. Being a bus operator, light rail vehicle operator is hard, don't get me wrong, but there's a better physical separation so that you can have a little bit more autonomy. Like an airline pilot, when you're up there, you got that closed door. When you're a bus operator, and this is where I came from Richmond, you're literally the pressure on your body of sitting all day on that bus. And a lot of times the seats on buses for the operators tend to degrade pretty fast. So they're not always good quality because they stay in the vehicle for a long time. And the pressure of their legs on the brakes and the constant strain of watching for pedestrians and making sure that as riders are coming up, that they're stopping and observing to get people on and off safely. It's a hard environment, and cars that cut them off or park in their lanes, and they have to deal with seniority, and then they have to deal with the rude passengers, and they have to deal with all those things that are in society that we all deal with. But when they're on a bus or on a train, they're not just in society, they're literally sitting right next to you. Those make being an operator very challenging, very stressful, and it means that it's hard to stay in that position if you have other opportunities. I know that there's some people who've done it for 30, 40 years, it's their career, and they love it. And they get up every day and they work overtime and they make incredible money. And there's some who get into it and it's too hard. So I'm talking on and on here to tell you that we don't give our operators and our maintenance team and our frontline staff nearly enough love.
Yeah, amen to that. And I will wrap up now because I do want to get you to back to your family and everything. And
y'all are my family.
Yeah,
literally, I came out here alone. So
yes, I guess you don't have to
plan. That's
worry
it.
about that quite as much. But maybe a good thing to close on is what you encourage riders and advocates to constructively do in the system to help on some of these things, and whether that's dealing directly with Sound Transit, or sometimes it's with the local officials in their community to sort of, you know, prep for Sound Transit arriving, make all the connections. We've talked about a lot of things that are complicated because some of these things are related, whether that's the housing crisis, making it hard to recruit labor, or, you know, years of racism and transportation planning make it harder for the agency to come in. So obviously there's a lot of issues to work on, but what's your advice to advocates as how they can constructively contribute to this planning and outreach process?
First, I want to say that stay engaged. I know that there's a term I've used recently, and I hope that you take it with the love that it's intended. That sometimes, and it's not just here, it's across the country, that really strong transit advocates can be the frenemies of transit planners. That we love each other, but sometimes we don't talk to each other well enough, and there's an antagonism, especially when you have a 120 whatever character tweet to get your feelings across. It doesn't set a good foundation for productive conversations, because I think at the end of the day, we are all working for the same thing. And it's really easy when you're on the Twitter world and you have limited conversations to elevate and to blame. And I think on both sides, not one side or the other, just both sides. Having some more grace for each other, my team for y'all, y'all for my team, so that we can work together to do the right solution. I think that's one thing that would be very helpful. And I think people forget a lot of times that the people who do spend their lives working on transit in this agency and other agencies, we're not doing it for the money. We're doing it because we have a passion and we believe that transit truly connects and lifts people up. We're doing it because we're mission driven. So working with us and expressing that appreciation, calling us out when we don't do it wrong, you know, keep calling us out when the stations aren't clean. Let us know when the escalator's down. You know, don't let us off the hook, but also give us grace when we're trying.
Yeah, and thanks so much again for your handling of the unexpected Westlake Station roof crisis. It's great to have that service back, and I'm sure riders are very grateful this week.
Well, thank you for your support and for all of your constructive criticism, your prodding, and your love of transit. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us, everyone. The recording will be up in a couple hours for if you have anyone you want to shoot this video to, you're curious about transit. This is a great primer. Sorry, we got really deep into some issues, and thanks for sticking with us throughout this hour and change.
Thank you.